I was 62 years old when I discovered that my mother had been hiding a fortune in a storage unit for 47 years. Not because she was senile, not because she forgot, but because she wanted to make absolutely certain that every single penny would go to the one daughter who had never asked for anything. Me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before you can appreciate the beautiful, devastating justice that finally came. My name is Dorothy Mae Caldwell, and I grew up in a small town called Hadley Springs, about 40 miles outside of Memphis, Tennessee. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. My father, Earl, worked at the paper mill, and my mother, Beulah, took in sewing and alterations to supplement the income. They had 4 daughters. Charlene, the eldest, born in 1955, Patricia, born in 1957, me, born in 1962, and the baby, Jolene, born in 1968. From the moment I could form memories, I understood my place in the family hierarchy. Charlene was the beauty. She had Mama's high cheekbones and Daddy's green eyes, and everyone in town said she could have been a movie star if she'd been born somewhere more glamorous than Hadley Springs. Patricia was the smart one, valedictorian, scholarship to Vanderbilt, the pride of the family. And Jolene, well, Jolene was the baby, and that was enough. She could do no wrong simply by virtue of being the last. And me? I was the quiet one. The one who blended into the wallpaper, the one who got Patricia's hand-me-down dresses after Charlene had already worn them first, so by the time they reached me, the hems were frayed and the colors had faded to ghosts of their former selves. Dorothy doesn't mind, Mama would say whenever someone pointed out the disparity. Dorothy's not fussy like the others. She was right. I didn't mind. Or rather, I had learned very early that minding didn't change anything, so I stopped letting myself feel it. When I was 17, Daddy had his first heart attack. He survived, but he couldn't work at the mill anymore. Mama's sewing business picked up, and Charlene, who had just gotten married to a man named Bobby Ray Thompson, the son of the richest family in 3 counties, started helping out by giving Mama grocery money once a month. Aren't we blessed to have Charlene looking after us? Mama would say, her eyes shining with gratitude. What Mama didn't mention was that I had dropped out of high school 3 months before graduation to work full-time at the Piggly Wiggly so I could give my entire paycheck to the household every single week, without fail, for 7 years. Charlene's monthly grocery money? Maybe $200, delivered with great fanfare and much praise. My weekly contribution? $300 handed over silently at the kitchen table every Friday night, never once acknowledged. Dorothy, did you remember to pick up Daddy's heart medication? Mama would ask instead of thank you. Dorothy, the back porch needs sweeping before Charlene comes to visit. Dorothy, your father needs his special pillow fluffed just so. I did it all. I did it all because I loved them, and because I kept waiting stupidly, naively, desperately for someone to notice. For someone to say, Dorothy, what would we do without you? They never did. When I was 24, I met a man named Harold Caldwell at the feed store where I had started working after the Piggly Wiggly closed down. He was a widower, 15 years my senior, with kind eyes and calloused hands and a way of looking at me like I was the most interesting person in any room. You're real quiet, he observed on our 3rd date, which consisted of sharing a basket of fried catfish at the diner on Route 7. But I get the feeling there's a whole lot going on behind those eyes. I almost cried. No one had ever suggested that my quietness might be hiding depth rather than emptiness. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the courthouse. Mama didn't come because Jolene had a ballet recital that same day. Jolene was 16 and had been taking ballet for exactly 3 weeks, but apparently that took precedence over her sister's wedding. Charlene sent a card. Patricia called from Nashville, where she was working as an attorney, and talked for 45 minutes about her own upcoming wedding to a surgeon named Dr. Richard Whitmore III. She did not ask about my wedding dress, my flowers, or my new husband. Well, Harold said that night, holding me close in our tiny apartment above the hardware store. I guess it's just you and me against the world, Dorothy May. I had never felt so loved or so lonely at the same time. Harold and I had 31 good years together. Not perfect. No marriage is perfect, but good. Solid. Built on mutual respect and quiet affection and the kind of love that doesn't need grand gestures to prove itself. We never had children. We tried, but it wasn't meant to be. And after a while, we made peace with it. We had each other, and that was enough. Harold worked as a carpenter, and I eventually became the manager of the feed store. We bought a little house on Maple Street, nothing fancy, but it was ours. We paid off the mortgage in 22 years, and Harold built me a quilting room in the back because I had taken up my mother's craft, though I never told anyone that my quilts had won 7 blue ribbons at the state fair because nobody ever asked what I did with my time. During those 31 years, I continued to be the family's invisible backbone. When Daddy finally passed in 1994, I was the one who handled all the arrangements because Charlene was too devastated, Patricia was too busy, and Jolene was too young at 26 years old to deal with death. I paid for half the funeral costs out of my own pocket because Charlene's husband, Bobby Ray, had cash flow issues, and Patricia's surgeon husband, Richard, said it wasn't good financial planning to use their savings for such things. When Mama started showing signs of dementia in 2005, guess who moved her into their home and became her full-time caregiver? Not Charlene, who lived in a 6-bedroom mansion with a live-in housekeeper. Not Patricia, who had retired early from her law practice and spent her days playing golf at the country club. Not Jolene, who had married a man named Chuck and moved to Florida, where she was very busy with her boutique essential oils business. No. It was me, Dorothy, the quiet one, the one who didn't mind. I took care of Mama for 8 years, changed her diapers, bathed her, fed her, sat with her through the long nights when she screamed for people who had been dead for decades, held her hand when she looked at me with blank eyes and asked, "Who are you? Where's Charlene?" I want Charlene. She never asked for me. Not once in 8 years. Even when her mind was gone, she remembered that I was the forgettable one. Harold passed in 2018, and I thought the grief would kill me. But it didn't. Grief is funny that way. It feels like it's going to swallow you whole. But somehow you keep waking up every morning, keep breathing, keep existing even when you don't want to. Mama passed 3 months later, and I was genuinely surprised by how little I felt. Not because I was cold or heartless, but because I had already done my grieving years of it, watching her slowly disappear while she called for daughters who never came. The funeral was the first time all 4 of us sisters had been in the same room in almost a decade. Charlene arrived in a black designer dress that probably cost more than my car, dabbing at her dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Her husband, Bobby Ray, was nowhere to be seen. They had divorced years ago, but Charlene had somehow managed to keep the mansion and most of the money. Patricia came with her surgeon husband, Richard, who spent the entire service checking his phone. Their son, Preston, hadn't bothered to come at all. Jolene flew in from Florida with her 3rd husband, a man named Derek, who sold timeshares and called everyone bro. And me? I sat in the front pew in a simple black dress I had made myself, and I didn't cry, and nobody seemed to find that strange. After the service, we gathered at Mama's house, my childhood home, to go through her belongings. This is where things get interesting. "Well," Charlene announced, settling into Mama's favorite armchair like she owned the place, which I suppose she was about to. I think we all know how this is going to go. The house goes to me, obviously, since I'm the eldest. Patricia can have the china. Jolene can have the jewelry. And Dorothy, she looked at me, tilting her head with exaggerated sympathy. "Dorothy, honey, is there anything in particular you want? I know Mama didn't have much, but maybe there's a keepsake or something?" I looked around the room at my sisters, at Charlene with her designer dress and her patronizing smile, at Patricia with her bored expression and her surgeon husband, At Jolene with her essential oils and her timeshare husband, and I felt something shift inside me, something that had been locked away for 62 years. Actually, I said quietly, I want Mama's sewing machine. Charlene laughed. That old thing? It doesn't even work anymore. But sure, Dorothy, if that's what you want. It's not like anyone else would. And I continued, my voice steady. I want to know about the storage unit. The room went silent. You see, I had learned something 3 weeks before Mama died. Something that changed everything. Mama had a lucid day, one of those rare, miraculous days when the fog lifted, and she was herself again, sharp and clear and present. She had grabbed my hand while I was feeding her lunch and looked at me with eyes that actually saw me. Dorothy, she whispered, I need to tell you something. About the storage unit. I didn't know what she was talking about. I told her so. Unit 147, she said. At Crawford Storage on Highway 12. I've been paying for it since 1971. The key is in my sewing machine, Dorothy. Taped inside the bobbin case. Mama, what's in the storage unit? She smiled, and for just a moment, she looked like the mother I remembered from childhood, before the dementia, before the years of favoring my sisters, before everything. Justice, she said. 50 years too late, but justice nonetheless. Then the fog rolled back in, and she went back to calling for Charlene. I didn't tell anyone what she'd said. I wasn't even sure it was real. She said a lot of things during those years that didn't make sense, but I remembered. And after she passed, I found the key exactly where she said it would be. I just hadn't opened the unit yet. Back to the living room, and my sister's frozen faces. What storage unit? Charlene's voice was sharp. Mama didn't have a storage unit? Unit 147 at Crawford Storage, I said. She's been paying for it since 1971. Patricia leaned forward, her lawyer brain clearly activated. That's impossible. We went through all of Mama's financial records. There was no mention of any storage unit. She paid in cash, I said, every month for 53 years. I found the receipts in her desk, filed under miscellaneous quilting supplies. Jolene's third husband, Derek, spoke up. Whoa, bro, that's like a lot of money in storage fees. What's in there? Buried treasure? He laughed at his own joke. Nobody else laughed. I don't know yet, I admitted. I haven't opened it. But Mama wanted me to have whatever's inside. She told me specifically. Charlene stood up, her face flushing red. Now wait just a minute. Whatever's in that storage unit is part of Mama's estate, which means it gets divided equally among all of us. You can't just... Actually, I said, and I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. I can. Because according to Mama's, well, the real one, not the one you had your lawyer friend draw up, everything she owned goes to me. Let me tell you about my mother's real will. When Mama was first diagnosed with dementia, before the fog really set in, she had called me into her room one afternoon while my sisters were off, doing whatever it was they did, when they weren't pretending to care. Dorothy, she said, I need you to promise me something. Anything, Mama. I need you to take care of me until the end. I know it's asking a lot. I know I haven't been fair to you over the years, but you're the only one I trust. I had swallowed hard. I'll take care of you, Mama. You know I will. I know. She reached under her mattress and pulled out an envelope. This is my will. The real one. I had a lawyer in Memphis draw it up, someone your sisters don't know. It leaves everything to you, Dorothy. Everything. I stared at the envelope. Mama, I don't. I know you don't want it for the money. That's exactly why you should have it. Your sisters. They've been circling like vultures for years, waiting for me to die so they can pick my bones clean. But you've given up everything for this family. And you've never asked for a single thing in return. Mama, let me finish. Her eyes were fierce. I've made a lot of mistakes, Dorothy. I let your father favor Charlene because she was pretty, and I let myself favor Patricia because she was smart, and I spoiled Jolene because she was the baby. And you, I took you for granted because you let me. Because you never complained, never demanded, never made a fuss. And by the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late to undo it. I was crying now. Couldn't help it. This won't make up for anything, she said, pressing the envelope into my hands. 50 years of neglect can't be erased by money or property, but I want you to have it anyway. All of it. And I want you to know that I see you, Dorothy. I've always seen you. I didn't know how to show it. So there I was, in Mama's living room with 3 sisters who had just learned that their meal ticket had been canceled. That's ridiculous, Patricia sputtered. Mama had dementia. Any will she made after her diagnosis isn't legally valid. It was made before her diagnosis, I said. 8 then once before. And I have 3 witnesses who can testify that she was of sound mind. One of them is a retired judge. Charlene's face had gone from red to purple. This is outrageous. I'm the eldest. This house is supposed to be mine. I've already made plans. I was going to sell it to a developer who wants to build condos. You were going to sell our childhood home to a condo developer? Jolene shrieked. Without even asking us? Oh, please, Charlene snapped. Like you care. You haven't set foot in this house in 8 years. Because you told me not to come. You said I was too disruptive for Mama's condition. You are disruptive. You and your stupid essential oils and your parade of husbands. At least my husband stuck around. Bobby Ray couldn't get away from you fast enough. And just like that, my sisters were at each other's throats. 50 years of resentment and jealousy and competition boiling over in Mama's living room while Mama's body was barely cold in the ground. I sat quietly on the couch and watched. And despite everything, I almost laughed. Derek leaned over to me. Bro, he whispered, this is wild. Is your family always like this? No, I said. Usually it's worse. The reading of the official will happen 2 weeks later, and it confirmed everything I'd said. Mama had left the house, all its contents, her savings account, a modest $47,000, and any and all other assets, including the contents of Storage Unit 147 at Crawford Storage to me. My sisters tried to contest it, of course. Patricia even hired her own lawyer. But Mama had been thorough. The will was ironclad, witnessed by impeccable sources, and the judge threw out the contest within 15 minutes. After the hearing, Charlene approached me in the courthouse hallway. I hope you're happy, she hissed. You've torn this family apart. I looked at my eldest sister, at the rage and entitlement twisting her beautiful features into something ugly. No, Charlene, I said quietly. This family was never together. I was just the only one pretending it was. I walked away before she could respond. I didn't go to the storage unit right away. I needed time to process everything: Mama's death, the will, my sister's hatred. For the first time in my life, I was truly alone. Harold was gone. Mama was gone. My sisters had made it clear they wanted nothing to do with me unless I was willing to give them what they felt they deserved. So I spent a month in my little house on Maple Street, quilting and thinking and trying to figure out what came next. Then, on a crisp October morning, I finally drove out to Crawford Storage. Unit 147 was bigger than I expected a 10 by 20 space, climate-controlled, filled with carefully labeled boxes and garment bags and what looked like a small mountain of fabric bolts. I spent the entire day going through it, and by the time the sun set, I was sitting on the concrete floor, surrounded by the remains of my mother's secret life, and I was laughing. I was laughing because I finally understood. Let me tell you what was in that storage unit. First, the quilts. Hundreds of quilts dating back to the 1922 made by my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and great-great-grandmother. Appalachian quilts in the old patterns: bear's paw, double wedding ring, log cabin, Lone Star, many of them in pristine condition. wrapped in acid-free paper and stored with the kind of care that only a fellow quilter would understand. I knew, because of my hobby and my state fair ribbons that nobody asked about, that antique Appalachian quilts in this condition were worth a fortune to the right collector. A quick mental estimate put the value of the quilt collection alone at somewhere between $500,000 and $800,000. But that wasn't the big secret. Second, the letters. 3 shoeboxes full of letters dating from 1971 to 1975, tied with faded ribbons. Letters from a man named James Holbrook, addressed to my mother. Love letters. My mother, my stern, practical Dorothy doesn't mind, mother had been having an affair. But that still wasn't the big secret. Third, the documents. A folder labeled important in my mother's careful handwriting. Inside were a birth certificate for a baby girl named Margaret Elaine Holbrook, born the 15th of August, 1972 in Memphis, Tennessee. Mother, Beulah May Perkins, my mother's maiden name. Father, James Theodore Holbrook. Adoption papers for Margaret Elaine Holbrook, adopted by Thomas and Elizabeth Farmer of Chicago, Illinois, renamed Margaret Elizabeth Farmer. A letter from James Holbrook, dated December 1975, informing my mother that he was dying of cancer and that he had set up a trust fund for their daughter to be accessed when she turned 50. Account statements for that trust fund, updated annually, showing steady growth over 47 years. The current value of the trust fund? 6 millions, $2 millions. I sat there on that cold concrete floor, and I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. My mother had had a child, a secret child, a daughter born between Patricia and me, conceived during an affair with a man named James Holbrook, a name I vaguely recognized as belonging to a wealthy Memphis businessman who had died when I was about 13. She had given this baby up for adoption and never told anyone. Not my father, not my sisters, not me. She had kept the secret for over 50 years, paying for this storage unit in cash, hiding the evidence of her transgression behind a wall of quilts and silence. And she had left it all to me. Not because I deserved a fortune, but because she knew I was the only one who would do the right thing with it. It took me 3 months to find her. Margaret Elizabeth Farmer, now Margaret Chen, 62 years old, 2 months younger than me, which made sense when I did the math, living in Portland, Oregon. Married for 35 years to a man named David Chen. 3 grown children, 4 grandchildren. A career as a high school English teacher, now retired. I wrote her a letter, an actual physical letter, because some things are too important for email. I explained who I was. I explained what I had found. I told her about our mother, the good and the bad, and I told her about the trust fund that was rightfully hers. She called me 2 weeks later, and we talked for 4 hours. I always knew I was adopted, she said, her voice warm and slightly tearful. But my parents, my adoptive parents, they were wonderful. They never made me feel like I was missing anything. I never went looking for my birth family because I didn't want to seem ungrateful. I understand, I said. I really do. But I always wondered, she admitted, especially as I got older, where I came from, who I looked like, whether my birth mother ever thought about me. She did, I said. She kept every document, every photograph, every scrap of information about you. She paid for that storage unit for 53 years just to make sure it would all be there when you were ready to find it. There was a long silence. Why didn't she reach out? Margaret asked. When I turned 50, like the trust fund said, she could have contacted me. Why didn't she? This was the question I had been dreading, the one I didn't have a good answer for. I think, I said slowly, she was afraid. Afraid you would hate her for giving you up. Afraid of disrupting your life. Afraid of facing what she had done. My mother. She wasn't a brave woman, Margaret. She took the easy path whenever she could. And the easy path was to keep hiding. But she told you, at the end, When she was dying, when she was running out of time to make things right, I paused. She asked me to take care of you. She didn't use those exact words, but that's what she meant. She knew I would find you. She knew I would tell you the truth. Another long silence. I'd like to meet you, Margaret said finally. My sister. I started crying then. Couldn't help it. I'd like that too, I managed to say. Margaret flew out to Tennessee the following month, and I picked her up at the Memphis airport. I recognized her immediately, even though I'd never seen her in person before she had Mama's high cheekbones and Daddy's. Wait, no. Not Daddy's eyes. James Holbrook's eyes, dark brown instead of green. We stood there in the arrivals area, two 62-year-old women who shared a mother but had lived entirely separate lives, and we hugged like we'd known each other forever. I brought you something, she said, pulling a small package from her carry-on. It's not much, but I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a photograph, a young woman with dark hair and a shy smile, holding a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. That's me, Margaret said. 3 days old. My adoptive mother took that photo at the hospital. She always said the nurse who handed me over was crying. She thought the nurse must have gotten attached during my time in the nursery. I looked at the nurse in the background of the photo, and my heart stopped. It was my mother. She wasn't a nurse. She must have convinced someone to let her hold her daughter one last time to see her off to her new life. And she had stood there in that hospital room, crying, while the farmers took the baby she was giving away. She never stopped loving you, I said, my voice breaking. She just didn't know how to show it. Now, you might be wondering about my other sisters, about what happened when they found out about our secret sibling and the $4. 2 million trust fund. Oh, they found out. Small towns have big mouths, and someone at the bank apparently mentioned something to someone who mentioned something to someone who mentioned something to Jolene's second ex-husband's cousin's hairdresser. Within a week, Charlene was on my doorstep. A secret sister, she screeched. And a trust fund? Dorothy, you have to share that money. It's only fair. We're family. I looked at my eldest sister, the one who had sold our mother's jewelry without telling anyone. The one who had been planning to sell our childhood home to condo developers, the one who had never once thanked me for the 8 years I spent caring for our mother. No, I said. What do you mean, no? That money should be divided equally. The money isn't mine to divide. It belongs to Margaret. Our mother set it up for her, and Margaret is the only one who has any claim to it. But if you helped her access it, you're entitled to a finder's fee. I don't want a finder's fee. Dorothy, don't be stupid. This is millions of dollars. You can't just... Charlene, I interrupted, and something in my voice made her stop. I have spent 62 years being quiet. Being invisible, being the one who doesn't mind, who doesn't complain, who doesn't make a fuss. And I am done. She stared at me like I had grown a second head. I don't want the money, I continued. I don't need the money. I have my house, I have my quilts, I have my garden, and for the first time in my life, I have a sister who actually likes me. That's more than enough. You're insane, Charlene sputtered. You've completely lost your mind. Maybe, I agreed, but I'm happy. Can you say the same? I closed the door in her face. Margaret Chen and I have now been in each other's lives for 4 years. She's the sister I never had, which is funny, because I had 3 other sisters my whole life and never felt connected to any of them. We talk on the phone every Sunday. We take turns visiting each other. 1 month she comes to Tennessee, the next I fly to Portland. Her children call me Aunt Dorothy, and her grandchildren climb into my lap and ask me to tell them stories about the olden days in Tennessee. And the money? Margaret used part of it to set up a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. She donated another portion to her old high school for new library books. She paid off her children's mortgages and set up college funds for her grandchildren. And she absolutely insisted on giving me a portion. Half, she said firmly when we discussed it. I won't take no for an answer. Mom left that storage unit to you for a reason. She wanted you to have something for yourself, Dorothy. Something that was just yours. So I took the money. Not half, I negotiated her down to a quarter, which was still more money than I knew what to do with. I donated some to the local library. I funded a quilting program at the community center. I paid for a new roof at my church. And I bought myself a small beach house in Gulf Shores, Alabama, where I go every winter to escape the Tennessee cold. But here's the part of the story that I haven't told you yet. The part that makes this whole thing worth telling. Last Christmas, Margaret came to visit me in Tennessee. We were sitting in my quilting room, drinking hot cocoa and working on a double wedding ring pattern together. When my phone rang, it was Jolene, crying, Dorothy, I need help. Chuck left me, took everything, I don't have anywhere to go. I looked at Margaret. She raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry to hear that, Jolene, I said calmly. That must be very difficult. Can I come stay with you? Just for a little while, until I get back on my feet? A year ago, even 6 months ago, I might have said yes. I might have opened my door and my wallet and my heart to a sister who had never once done the same for me. But I had learned something over the past few years. Something important. No, I said. Silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean, no? I mean, no, Jolene. You can't stay with me. You've never been there for me not once in 60 years, and I'm not going to be there for you now just because it's convenient for you. But we're family. No, I said. We're relatives. There's a difference. Family shows up. Family cares. Family doesn't wait until they need something to pick up the phone. I hung up. Margaret was staring at me, her mouth slightly open. I can't believe you just did that, she said. Neither can I admitted. Then we both burst out laughing, real, genuine sister laughter, and I realized that this was what I had been missing my whole life. Not the money, not the recognition, not even the vindication. Just someone who was on my side. Someone who saw me. Someone who chose me. I'm 66 years old now. I have a sister who loves me, a beach house in Alabama, and a quilting room full of blue ribbons that I finally hung on the wall where everyone can see them. Charlene still calls occasionally, usually when she wants money. I don't answer. Patricia sent me a Christmas card last year, the first one in 15 years. I sent one back, but I didn't include a return address. Jolene, I heard through the grapevine, moved in with Charlene after Chuck left her. Apparently they fight constantly. Derek, the timeshare husband, sends me memes on Facebook, and I have no idea why, but they're usually pretty funny. And Margaret, my secret sister, my found family, my unexpected gift from a mother who never knew how to show love. Margaret is coming for Easter this year. She's bringing her grandchildren, and we're going to teach them how to quilt. I like to think Mama would be proud. Not of the money or the house or the blue ribbons, but of this. 2 daughters brought together by secrets and silence and 50 years of hidden love, finally becoming the family that neither of us ever had. Sometimes justice doesn't come from courts or lawyers or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes justice is just a quiet woman finally saying no. Sometimes justice is choosing yourself after a lifetime of being chosen last. Sometimes justice is a storage unit full of quilts and letters and truth, waiting patiently for the one person who would know what to do with it. And sometimes, just sometimes, justice is sweeter for being late. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. I know it was a lot, maybe more than you bargained for when you clicked on whatever brought you here, but I learned something else through this whole journey. Stories matter. Whose story gets told matters. And sometimes the quiet ones, the invisible ones, the ones who don't mind, sometimes our stories are worth telling too. So here's what I want to leave you with, if you're anything like me. If you've spent your life being overlooked, being taken for granted, being the one who holds everything together while everyone else takes the credit, your time is coming. It might not look like a storage unit full of quilts and a secret sister. It might be smaller than that, or bigger, or completely different. But somewhere out there, justice is waiting. Recognition is waiting. A family who actually sees you is waiting. You just have to be patient. And you have to be ready to say yes when it finally arrives and no to everyone who doesn't deserve your time anymore. Dorothy Mai Caldwell. I'm 66 years old. And I'm finally, after a lifetime of waiting, exactly where I'm supposed to be. Thanks for spending this time with me on the porch. The coffee's always on, and there's always room for one more story.